have you been dealing with disappointment and anxiety lately? I mean, have you ever noticed it directly impacting your leadership and your business outcomes? Have you ever wondered, could anxiety really be affecting my finances or my business? And most importantly, how can I change my relationship with anxiety? Well, my special guest and I are going to address these questions head on and so much more in this week's episode. What's good, Elevation Nation, and welcome to the Elevate It podcast, where it stands for inner tugging, that divine pull within, guiding us in self-awareness and relationships and spiritual unfolding through inner work. I am your host, Christian F. Johnson. Now let's go. Listen, today's guest is a powerhouse. I'm talking about the CMO and COO for founder-led coaching and consulting companies, the host of the Redefining Growth Podcast. He's passionate advocate for not just growing business, but healing, hear me y'all, healing the inner relationship with growth itself. Come on, y'all. All right. He scaled a B2B company from 650K to 1.5 million in just 6 months. Listen, we're going to have to talk after this episode for that, okay? All right, he's launched a top 10% coaching podcast and has helped over 100 Instagram and LinkedIn accounts monetize significantly. So in short, he knows a thing or two about high performance and how anxiety can secretly affect it all. Today, he's here to help us connect the dots between the inner world and our financial world, especially when it comes to disappointment, anxiety, and income. Elevation Nation, please help me welcome my new friend, Bradley, to the Elevate It podcast. What's good? What's good?
What is going on, man? Wow, that is, I tell you what, if I wasn't already in a good mood, I would be in a good mood now, because wow, that is an incredible intro, dude. I am super honored to be here. I am serious. Like I need to like employ you as like a hype man for my clients before we film content. Like, wow, that's incredible. I have to say.
Bradley, we can talk. Don't tempt me with a good paycheck, okay? How's it going, man?
It's going good, man. I'm super grateful to be here. I'm excited.
Good, man. You are illuminating already. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. But I'm going to let you know, I want to get right in because I understand these social media streets. And if we don't get right to the point, some people be like, listen, we're going to go to something else. So let's get right to it, okay? Listen, so this area of anxiety, right? This area of, disappointment. Is there any like personal connection? Like, I know you're stellar in your business, but what personal connection do you have to this life of anxiety and even dealing with disappointment?
Christian, we could fill the entire rest of the episode with the answer to this question, but no. So I have a very, very pretty intense story with anxiety. The short of it is I was raised to really have a negative relationship with myself. The dynamic I was brought up in, very sheltered, very religious focused life, in a very toxic way, I'll put it that way, was focused all on basically creating yourself to allow others to shine, put it that way. And my biggest issues coming out of childhood and coming out of, the typical norms of education and things were always so rooted in and so focused on, what can I do to make everybody else happy? And it was never what can I do to make myself happy? And what this resulted in was lived my life as in childhood and early adulthood with riddled with panic and anxiety and issues related to self-worth. And we're on a decade of therapy. So we've put in the work, seen the results, fortunately, decided to go my own route instead of going to college, normal education, diverted from that, started a business at 18, many variations later, here we are. But there's essentially taking the secondary route that I feel like a lot of people, building businesses, running companies, et cetera, can kind of relate to. And listen, with the anxiety piece, where it falls in for me is we can get more into this, but basically about 18 months ago now, I got the shock of my life getting into a relationship with partner who I now consider to be my best friend and an amazing human that fortunately, still together and everything, but that brought up just a world of fear and anxiety and panic within myself that I didn't even know was there. And so, after kind of going through, not to say going through this again, but unveiling all of that within myself, I was lulled into this false sense of security that I was like, oh, I was done fixing myself. I've been to therapy. I'm good to go. I got out of the trauma of my childhood. I'm good to go. Nope. And since then, I've really had a big awakening that I really think I'm here to focus on this. I really, I love the business side. I love working with entrepreneurs and founders. I love what I do, and I'm grateful that I get to do it every single day. But there's something really, really impactful about this that long term, a couple years down the road, I would love to have TED Talk situation and working on, with leaders and founders on specifically on mindset and mental health and just as it, how their business relates to them and how they relate to their business and kind of separating the two. And so now I run podcasts called Redefining Growth, and I couldn't have said it better myself. So I'm going to actually refer people back to your intro because that was amazing. But I work with founders on marketing, client success, business development. I actually can honestly consider myself, with a couple of my clients, I'm literally we come on and shoot the shit, and we'll just sit there and really help them build something pretty spectacular. So yeah, super honored to get to do what I do. So
no, man, I appreciate it. And I thank you for touching into the area, that personal, right? But then also seeing how that inner work ties into what it is that you're doing. And I just come from that mindset that all things work together. So
yeah.
even in the area of pain, right? When we exercise, we realize that sometimes even in that life and in that pain, right, there's muscle that's built. So even with the traumatic situations that we deal with in life, it's like, I could stay there, but it seems like you've taken your journey and where you're at, and you said, you know what, I'm gonna take that pain and use it for progress. I'm gonna take that pain and I'm gonna turn it to the area of purpose. And now you're doing amazing things. And we've talked off screen, so I understand, you now being in New York and everything else like that, whole different world and different things like that. So it's just really dope to see you identify, okay, I've dealt with the anxiety, I've dealt with panic, I've dealt with these things, but it didn't define me. It's a part of my story. And so I'm excited about that part as well, because there is a story, there is a TED Talk, there is a book or two or three. And so, Bradley, I'm going to challenge you publicly. Get the stuff done, all right? Let's get it done, because there's people who need that light that's illuminated. They need the realness. Not just to even talk about me, but Thursday, you're aware of this, I have a book that's coming out, and it's really coming from that same perspective. Like, I've had the microphone for years, but the voice that was coming out wasn't my authentic voice. So I already sensed that vibe. And you're like, look, it's time for me. This is the season. I've been helping other brands. I'm going to continue to help other brands, but I'm in the season and a time where I know that my brand, the Bradley brand, all right, we need to go ahead and move forward with this. So I salute you. I celebrate you, and thank you for your victory. So let's get to a different place. Let's go a little bit deeper, because you're talking about this anxiety. We're talking about the area of affecting the area of mindset. And then you're working with entrepreneurs. So, I need to know too, because we got to talk about the finances. Like, is there a connection truly with the area of life of like, I'm anxious, I got anxiety. By the way, I do therapy, and I also am medicated right now pertaining to anxiety and depression. So one and the same of identifying, I'm public about it because there's no shame. Get what you need to go ahead and be the best version of who you are. But is there a connection with this anxiety and income?
1,000%. And also, I just want to take a second and salute you for being public and open. I am medicated for it as well. I want to fully break down all the what's the stigmas? Is that the word?
Yes.
Behind that. So I applaud you, appreciate you making taking space for that. But yes, 1,000%. There is a connection. My focus on the podcast and with my content on all of this is I have always prided myself on being able to find contextual frameworks for something that maybe wasn't exactly easily understandable prior to that. So for instance, there's a lot on social media that talks about, you go through a hard moment and you want to find proof that you can do something you maybe haven't done before. How do you find the proof? Well, you go make the proof, and all of it stops there. And I'm like, I need more. I need more, like, how do I do the thing that I don't know how to do when I don't have the proof? Like, I need more of that context. And so, speaking specifically on the crossover of entrepreneurship and how mental health, mindset, etc., anxiety can affect people in that realm, you know, there's a lot you'll find on social media, but I'm hoping what we're about to talk about is again, just with that context, is goes a little bit deeper, gives frameworks, gives understanding to maybe what wasn't easily understandable before, and kind of helps navigate then a way out. So there's a couple things that always come to mind to me when I think about the crossover between anxiety and mental health versus entrepreneurship. So I talk a lot about our fight or flight responses. I've done a lot of research on this and talked to a couple experts. And our fight or flight responses make up more of our day-to-day interactions than I would have believed at a time. So, for instance, if you are in a position right now where you are taking big leaps with your business, you have a lot of uncertainty happening in your life. You have a lot of you don't know what the next thing that's going to happen is. You care a lot about what you're doing in your business, etc. It's very easy to kind of let that inner voice try and tell you what might happen, or try and say, "Ooh, this is going to happen." Or if you've ever had that thing where all you can think about is the worst possible case scenario in your business, that is your fight or flight response. That is your survival instinct telling you to, hey, we're not going to try and thrive because that's going to hurt too much. I just want to help you survive. I just want to help you get through today. Forget tomorrow. Forget building a business in 10 years. I just want to help you be better, be okay right now. But we all know building a business, doing something hard isn't exactly easy. So what will happen is we let that judgment, we let that fight or flight response not necessarily take control, but influence what we're thinking, what we're feeling moving forward. And we'll kind of get more into like how to kind of reverse that. But that's one aspect of it. Another is when your job is so closely attached to your personal life, your opinion of yourself that you start to draw, it inherently comes from the value of how your business is performing. And I can personally say on many, many occasions, still struggle with it at times. That is one of the quickest ways to ruin not only your self-worth, but the progress of your business, because they are inherently two separate things. That's number two. And then number three is, on a very tactical note, entrepreneurship is a game of risk. Everything about building your own business, carving out a path that wasn't there before, it's risky. Some things are a little risk, some things are a big risk. But what anxiety and difficulty, what anxiety will do, and struggling with that, what it'll do is it will distort your ability to properly assess risks. The things that look really, really, really scary might only be scary because there's an old pattern, an old wound, an old story that you're telling yourself that it's scary because of this. It's scary because you have the predisposition to think that something's going to happen just because it was a certain way that it happened before. Versus some other things that might actually be largely at risk might not look at all risky to you. Again, because of that predisposition of what those stories, of those old wounds, old habits are telling you. So the thing I advocate here for on this one is just objective thinking, which we'll kind of get more into the hows and figuring all that out. But those are the three kind of areas that I know for me, certainly, that I focus on. But then also when I work with my clients and just general conversation and podcast, I'm kind of coming back to those three, and I'm like, how are any of those three seeping into, roadblocks that you consistently find yourself running up against when it comes to I would say the balance between your mental health, your well-being, and then the progress of the business.
Powerful. I love that. The thing that you're making me think about, so you're talking about the fight or flight, but for me, I'll even add the aspect of like ego, right? Because for me, you'll hear the ego. And I realized that the ego is not a problem. It's not a bad thing. It's actually wanting to protect us. So some of the stuff you're talking about, that tag teams with the fight or flight, but sometimes that protection keeps us at a place where we're not able to move forward, because it's pointing us to like the past. Like, you remember that one time, Bradley, when you took that risk, and do you remember when this happened? Well, listen, we don't want to go ahead and do that, because if we do that, we could potentially deal with that. So talking about the inner work, but the inner voices. And so I think sometimes it takes a level of discernment. And I tell you, I was listening to Napoleon Hill, one of clips on YouTube. It was a Napoleon Hill one, and I was listening to the audiobook of Outwitting the Devil. And something that hit me, I was listening to him, is he was talking about identifying like a clarity, like the vision for what we have. And I'm huge on visualization, meditation, manifestation, like all those things. So seeing and feeling the thing, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, like, what's the main thing? Like, what is the thing that I, Christian, have to build this before I leave this earth? So this hit me, okay? So I wrote that down, Bradley, and I have been like putting that before my eyes when I wake up and at night before I go to bed. And so throughout the rest of the day, I'm having a conversation and I'm talking with Ego. I'm like, listen, I hear what you're saying, but this is the goal. This is what I feel like we need to go ahead and do. So Ego, if you trust me a little bit, right? I know you want to protect, but let me go ahead and step in this lane. Let me do this. Let me do that. And it's funny, like I'm talking to myself, but because of what we've done and it ties that fight or flight, like, are we going to fight here? Are we going to stay here? Like, what are we going to go ahead and do? And so I love what you're saying because it reminds me of that mindset. Like, what would happen if we got super clear on what our expression is that we desire to have in the earth and then commit to that, make the decision to move forward with that, and then allow the anxiety, because anxiety is not bad. It's what we do with it.
That's exactly it. So this actually reminds me of I just made a podcast episode on this. So your anxiety is actually there to protect you. Because if you think about it, I mean, I'll just share my personal experience with this just as an example for context. The primary, I would say, perpetrator in my childhood with relationships and things was my mother, and had a very toxic relationship in terms of how she would treat me and rely on me as a child, and that created a lot of a misalignment for me with my values, who I was, what I wanted, because I was always focused on her. Well, my anxiety would kick up whenever she would come in the room, whenever she would be there. And so what happened was, because my anxiety, my core fear was around that, what I've now realized is that my anxiety also put up walls around that. So what this looked like was, I was afraid of my mom coming into the room. What would happen when my mom came into the room? I would get nauseous. My heart would beat really fast. I would have all these physical things because it was the panic telling me whatever. Then over time, I became fear of being nauseated, because if I was nauseated, then my mom was probably coming in the room and I was interacting with my mom. And then over time, what that turned into was then a full-blown fear of vomiting. And so I've struggled with this, I would say, working on overcoming it. It's been interesting coming to New York, because there's definitely, I'm not going to lie, full transparency here, there's some interesting things that have come up. I was raised in the Midwest. I don't think you've fully addressed the fear of vomiting until you've been 200 feet under the Hudson with no way to get out for a good 20 minutes going in a subway, and like the anxiety decides to play up and it's like, oh, this would be a great place to vomit. And you're like, wow, okay. So that was great for the first season here. But the point is, it turned into this fear of this thing. But does that have anything to do with the core fear that it was protecting me from? No.
Ooh.
So your anxiety, that voice that kicks up in your head, I would challenge anybody listening to this to ask yourself, is this thing that it's telling me that I should be afraid of, is that actually what I am? Is that actually what has caused me fear in the past? Is that actually what has caused me pain in the past? And I would say for most of us, I would say the answer is probably no, because we haven't done the work yet to really remember and resonate with what that core thing is. And then only once we get to the core thing can we then actually start to dismantle the belief systems that we've built around it.
Powerful. You're knocking it out the park. Elevation Nation, if you haven't already, it's time to get your pen and paper out, or your laptop. Like, take some notes, right? Because you might be in a place where you're dealing with this now. You dealt with it last season and it may come back, and that's okay. But now you're listening to some real things that Bradley and I are sharing to say, you know what? I haven't thought about that. Let me go ahead and try that out. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert. He's not saying he's an expert, but we both have been through an area of seeing this is what life is. We have studied with experts and we live this thing out. So listen to what he's saying. I'm going to go back to your mother for a second. Okay. And, not just about her, but I want to talk about the dynamic. So Elevation Nation, maybe you can identify with something. I'll just take you to a place to your own journey dealing with anxiety and what that thing is. For Bradley, he said it was an area of his mother. He spoke about the area of vomiting. You know, for me, I lost my biological father at a very young age. I had dealt with some different things as far as fear factor. I've dealt with some things with being sexually abused. I've dealt with a number of things that I dealt with as that younger, generation and dealing with that. So I had to overcome some things, even about self and confidence and all those things. So it's crazy because I got 3 sons right now. All right. Been married for 17 years with my wife. And that's my joke with God, with the universe, is like, oh, so I didn't have a biological father growing up. I didn't have this, but now you're going to give me 3 boys. Like, Three African American boys. Let's move forward with that if we're going to get really real in this world. So what I tell you is those jokes and the times you get to go over it, like we're talking about this thing, realizing this. So let's move forward with this. But listen, I got to go from here because going back to your mother, that's one area of a relationship. But from looking at you, you don't look like that story when you shared it, that it's a place that has overtaken you now. So there has had to be something that you have done practically in your relationship to shift your relationship with anxiety. So even from your mother or from other relationships and everything, what practical steps, what are you doing? What have you done? What did you take so that you can go ahead and turn these tough days that where doubt was creeping in and take them into a days of victory?
I love that. I love that. I absolutely answer that, but I want to come back to something really, really quick. What you mentioned about your father and then now having three sons. Have you ever heard of the string shot theory?
I have not.
Hang on. What is it? No, it's not string shot. It's what's the thing where like you pull back on the
slingshot or yeah.
Shot. Wow.
Slingshot. You're good.
Slingshot theory. So essentially what it is, I don't even know if it's a technical theory, but it just the concept where your issues and difficulties in life will directly correlate to how much you can impact others along those same lines. So for instance, you losing your father at a very young age in that particular realm set you very far back, but you can only go so far forward if you go so far back.
Sheesh.
You only make the impact on your sons and on your life and in others' lives because you had to experience that, because you had to pull back. And that's what go so much further.
Oh, you go ahead, man. You're well,
I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I thank you.
But no, absolutely, man. I mean, there are several things. I would say, for me personally, it's obviously been a season. I'll share specifically, we can kind of get into more of these frameworks. So the motto for my show, again, kind of as I shared, and for everything that I do with this area, is frameworks for life's hardest moments. But the thing that I always share before I get into any of the frameworks, kind of a general disclaimer, but also very important, is that, I am a person, knowing myself, and anybody who can resonate with this, I am a person who I like to have steps. I like to have, okay, if I do this, then I do this. I like to have a game plan. I like to know the lay of the field, like know the lay of the land rather, right? But the most important skill, framework, mindset shift, whatever you want to say, none of the plans, none of the action steps, none of the strategies, none of the frameworks matter unless you have the sole framework of knowing how to trust yourself when there is no framework, when there is no strategy, when there is nothing in front of you. And that there is some tactics that I can share behind that, but it's like, I want everybody who's listening to this or ever will, everything that we're about to go into does not matter unless you have it's not even about the ability to trust yourself. It's the desire to trust yourself. Because I think that's more important than having the ability, because anybody can start that today. You don't have to have the ability to look at yourself and say, I'm amazing, I'm incredible, I can do this. If you don't believe it, don't bullshit yourself. But at the end of the day, going toward that direction will get you everywhere you need to go. So with that being said, there's a couple things that come to mind back to your question. Number one of my personal mottos that I've developed that I really, really lean on is don't ask for the situation to become easier, but demand that you become greater. So there's a lot of talk, I think, online, especially, I'm a very big Mel Robbins fan in certain ways, but there's been a lot of talk with her, her book, Let Them Theory and things like that. And not to poo-poo and whatever, any of that, but going with that kind of train of thought, there has sparked, I think, a lot of conversation in a good way in mental health and anxiety around, trying to say, let them do this or then let me do this, et cetera, I think from my personal taste, that kind of new movement, so to say, or any kind of relating ones, it relies a little bit too heavy on being able to influence or delegate or take, kind of gather expectations around what somebody else will do. So what I like to think, again, is don't ask for the situation to become easier. So I'm not ask for the environment that you're in, the people you encounter, and what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're doing, the circumstance you find yourself facing. Don't ask for that to become easier. Don't ask for that to change, because 99 times out of 100, you can't change it. And the one time out of 100 that you can, it's still going to be easier to just improve yourself, to be able to be to be able to overcome the challenge that's in front of you. So don't ask for the situation to make them easier, but demand that you become greater. And that, for me at least, it forces me to look at how can I, instead of trying to spend my energy in overwhelming thinking what they're going to say and what they're going to do and how this can be different and how I can change the puzzle so that way it's a little easier for me to understand. It's like, no, how can I become better at solving the puzzle? And I think that applies to a lot of different things. The other thing specifically that comes to mind with regards to business is, there's a lot of shame and just inner feelings that I think a lot of entrepreneurs will not really acknowledge, because they'll say, oh, it's just business, or oh, it's just a part of the game, or they'll encounter these really rough moments of these seasons of no, and these seasons of where they get just completely punched in the face, and it's like, this isn't working, and I'm trying this, and da 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 da. First off, again, back to my point about separating the personal from the business. You are not your business. Your self-worth is not your business. So understanding that, but then also on a more tactical level, instead of thinking of the no's as just not yeses, think of the no's as, I have to get through so many no's in order to get to a yes. It's a simple, logical, mathematical equation. You don't know how many no's it's going to be. It might be one no, it might be 10, it might be a million no's, but there is only a certain amount of no's that you need to go through until you get to a yes. And then after that, the amount of no's that you need to get to the next yes will be substantially smaller, and continuing. And that's just general growth. That's growth 101. So I like looking at, and I can share kind of more frames like that if you'd like, but that's just a frame for me that comes up in business that I'm like, whenever I'm encountering something that's really difficult, and that applies a lot in personal life as well. But encountering something that's really difficult, I'm looking at the thing that's difficult. I'm saying, what can I learn from it? How can I use this in a way? But also, I need to get through this, because if I don't learn this lesson now, this lesson's going to keep coming back and biting me in the butt until I do. But B, I'm looking at the hard thing that's in front of me, and I'm taking the fact that it is hard, and I'm using that I'm saying that that's actually a good thing, because if it was easy, I wouldn't be learning something. So I'm identifying the fact that something is difficult as actually a green flag, not as a red flag, because then I'm saying, great, now I get to actually learn the lesson from this. If something's easy, you don't learn jack shit. If it's easy, you relish in the victory. If it's hard, that's the only place you get to learn. So you get the opportunity there to move forward. So just a couple things that come to mind for that, for sure.
No, I like that. I'll tell you what I really celebrate, and then I'll add a different perspective on this as well, because it was a book when I was in sales years ago. It was like Go for No that I read. So that was like pretty much the same concept that you're talking about. Look, get out there and get to know. You're gonna get to a yes eventually, right? So a lot of times we get to that area, that disappointment. We get to that area of the frustration or whatever, and we're just like, I quit. And I think somebody was talking about Thomas Edison or something like that. I think it was in that Napoleon Hill clip that I was listening to, and saying how many went there, like 9,000, fails to get to the area of that success. But will we still move forward? And again, listening to the area of the framework, seeing the bigger picture, saying this is where I desire to go, this is where I'm going, and realizing, okay, this is the pain, but also this is the area of the power, this is the pleasure, this is the purpose, this is what I need to go do. I'm gonna move forward from there. And then I'm gonna identify and change my mindset to not view difficulty as bad, not to put that in a box as this is. So I'm realizing it's a part of the journey, the process. And so I'm going to now look at it, if I'm hearing you correctly, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to say, okay, how do I look at this situation and get through it? So it's not an avoidance. It's not I'm going to just remove myself. How do I get this away? How do I get no, like learning through the journey, like learning, understanding it, squeezing all you can squeeze out of the situation, and realizing that this can work together for my good, and I can always learn. So even if the situation doesn't change, I'm changing about the situation. Mm-hmm. And because of that, whatever life is going to bring me, then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. And I guess that even when the punches do come, or the pain or the stretching, like you just have a different mindset. And I think too, something that's great about what I'm hearing you say too, is like, you do have to put a holistic approach to that. So that's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, like all those things. Yes, it might be a strategy. And I love what you're saying, because if you don't do that inner work, and for me, it's the area of God, presence, beauty, life, all those things, and coming to the area of my amness, so to speak. Right. So looking at that, or for whatever, somebody else is looking at, and just centering yourself and realizing, like, I have to start from a place of peace. Like, I don't know about you, Bradley, but for me, like, that has been the best gift when it comes to decision making, when it comes to life, when it comes to moving forward, even income and business decisions, like, am I operating, especially with the anxiety? I'm like, wait, I need time. And it's okay, Elevation Nation. If you're watching and you're listening, like, it's okay to let people know I need time.
Mm-hmm.
I need to process. No, right? I need to go do something about the situation so that we're not hindering ourselves. You have everything you need within you. I think that's why we need coaches, gurus, whatever you want to call it. They just help to pull out what's already within you. So it's nothing missing, nothing lacking, nothing broken. You're just coming to realize that maybe the patterns of my past, the pain, has kind of allowed that to snatch me out of alignment. So now I want to get back to that place of growth. So I love the strategies that you're sharing. I love the realness. Also love the fact that you're saying too, I heard it, this is what I'm doing, but this is what I'm also still dealing with.
Yep. 1,000%. I mean, listen, I take a lot of inspiration in terms of how I'm formally presenting a lot of what I do on my podcast and content in here from others. I take a lot of inspiration from the Hermosis, from people like Jasmine Star, your Gary V's, et cetera, things like that. And obviously give credit where credit is due. But the more raw, maybe, less, or I don't know, maybe in this frame actually more social media worthy kind of things where it's hard and difficult and nasty and confusing at first. Like, there's not a single thing that I talk about that I have not deeply struggled with. So, or still deeply struggle with. I mean, so 1,000%. I want to actually really quickly, I want to go back to something you said. You said start from a place of peace. I want to, I first off, absolutely completely resonate with that. But I want to challenge somebody listening who's thinking, who hears that, because I feel like you could either hear that in two ways. You could hear that as start from a place of peace as in everything needs to be perfect, or start from a place of peace as in I accept that everything isn't perfect and I'm going to do it anyways. So if you're hearing that and your thought was, okay, well, I need to sit down with my bath salts and my candle, and I need to make sure that my hair is perfect and the makeup's on, and I need to make sure that I'm like the desk is clean. No. So there's this phrase that runs through my head a lot, which is it doesn't need to be optimal to be beneficial. I think as entrepreneurs, we get stuck in this thing of thinking that you have to have the aesthetic, or you have to have the Instagrammable worthy, experience, or that, before you start something, you need to have everything laid out and you need to have the full plan figured out, If it's between the person who's only going to act, so if you 1 to 100, right? 100%. If it's between the person who's only going to act when they're feeling 100% versus the person who acts when they feel between any day between 1 to 100%, even if that second person isn't able to get as much done every single day as the one person who can act 100% will, I'm betting on the second person every single day. So instead of looking at that and saying, how can I create for me at least, and obviously would love to hear your thoughts on this, but instead of looking at that and saying, how can I create the peace in order to get started? It's how can I accept a situation I find myself in, find the peace where I can, and do it anyways.
I love it. I love it. For me, I am the peace.
Yes, exactly.
So
you bring it with you no matter where you go. It's like it's attached to you. You can't get rid of it. Yeah.
Right. And so, like I'm saying, I really do believe in that. There's nothing missing, nothing lacking, nothing broken. So for me, it's just getting back to my center. And so again, with social media, everything out, we live in a world where we're seeing what I call the 3D world. I don't call it necessarily the real world, but it's the one we're in. Might not be the one that I'm of, but it's the one I'm in. And because of that, I can see these things. And then now that messes with my programming. Okay, because I now seen this, somebody's robbing somebody down the street. Now in my programming, fear comes on and think, okay, well, that can now happen to me, or seeing all these things or whatever. But I'm realizing, okay, this is possible in this area, but let me sit with myself and realize that, okay, this may be happening down the street, but it doesn't have to happen here. And even if it did, then I also realize that I have power. I also have wisdom and things out there. I'm going to be all right. My wife says this often. She says, I'm always all right. She was teaching a lesson and she said, I'm always all right. And it ties into what you're saying because it has nothing to do with the outside. It has everything to do with what I have. So if we strip everything away, every title, every degree, all the platforms, all those things, like what I just have, like I'm good. I have breath in my body. I have clothes on my back. And even if I didn't have clothes on my back, like I still can make that decision to realize, because I've seen some people who would have less than what we have, but they have way more peace. They have way more, and we're feeling bad, and they are good. They're okay. But why? Because they're willing to look within. They're willing to realize and make these decisions. And so, yes, I am the peace. I bring it there. And so I need sessions and times like this to be reminded that sometimes we got to turn out the external noise and even the internal noise and come from the place and start from that center and say, okay. So I would do 15-minute breaks. Somebody can come into my office and I would say, they would complain and do different things. And I would say, okay, cool. Get your iPhone out. Hopefully iPhone, well, no offense to all the droids, but bless y'all anyway. So anyway, no offense, Bradley, if you're not an iPhone.
iPhone all the way.
Okay. All right. So let me get back on task now. All right. But I would say set the timer 15 minutes. That's what you got. And after that thing goes off, stop the complaining, stop the moaning, and let's realize where we are. Get it out. It's releasing it. We don't have to hold on to these things. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, feel what you need to feel. Don't judge it. Feel it. I'm pissed today. I'm frustrated. I'm hurt. That's fine. But I am not my feelings. I have them. I am peace. I am power. I am love. I am a divine being in human form. And so let me realize that, get back to my center. And now let's see where we need to go ahead and go. And so that's what I mean by the area. So thank you for even bringing that. You have an amazing gift, Bradley, man. I see what you're doing. And I see the podcast and the teacher and the coach in you as well, because you're hearing words, you're hearing things, you're resonating with it. And you're saying, look, we got to go back before we can move forward. And maybe somebody's listening, and that's a word of encouragement for somebody. We're such in a fast-paced world, but whatever you're resonating with, you need to go back and squeeze some things out. So thank you for that point of clarity about peace. I appreciate that.
Well, and actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to do it again because there's something you said that is so important. Have you ever heard of what's the book called? 90 Seconds to the Life You Love.
90 Seconds to the Life You Love. I have not.
It's a book, and essentially the entire premise of the book is that in 90 seconds, so there was a study that was done that if you can get a feeling, so we've got any one of millions of feelings we can experience. If you can just get it from your brain to your body, if you can just ground the feeling in your body, so instead of having the frustration and overthinking the frustration, feel the frustration. Just whether that means you just tighten your hands, or you feel it in your stomach and you get a little nauseous, or you feel whatever that means for you. If you can get it into your body has automatic response to that feeling to be able to get it out of you within 90 seconds.
Sheesh.
And so that's why things like yoga, grounding practices, Reiki, etc. are so powerful when you really break it down, is because it is allowing the feeling to pass through your head into your body. And then your body, if you think of it like a fire extinguisher system, your body has built-in processes to then process that out. Now, if it's a very strong emotion, odds are it's probably going to come in waves. But the point is that each of those waves hopefully get less and less as time goes on. But for that, for each of those times, if you can get it into your body, it only takes up to 90 seconds to get rid of any feeling.
Oh man, I need that book. Send me that book, and see too on the business side. Look, even send me your if you got affiliate link on it or you got something on it, because we can post that out for the people, to get you some income from that as well. But I need that book, man. I love it. I appreciate it. That's super, super, super powerful. Bradley, what would you say to the emerging leader, the entrepreneur who feels like every time they start to rise, anxiety, fear, disappointment, it just pulls them down?
Well, it pulls them down because they expect that it won't.
Please go deeper.
So I think a lot about expectations, and I get this, again, credit where credit is due, from Layla Hermosi, but your expectations will make or break your experience of reality, your experience of your life. Because very simply put, if you expect things to go better than they actually go, you'll always be disappointed. If you expect things to go worse than they actually go, you'll be satisfied in perpetuity. And so I'm not a fan of, artificially lowering your expectations, setting your expectations low. But I am a fan of, and I do advocate for, acknowledgement of what is actually happening and looking at the objective frame of your life. And it's very difficult, because we are beings with feelings and thoughts and actions, and we have opinions and emotions, and it's very difficult. But so it is very, very difficult. it is very, very difficult to, it's my dog. She's great during podcasts. It's awesome. Sorry. It's very, very difficult to think objectively. There's even studies that have been shown that it is actually impossible to think 100% purely objectively. But even just asking yourself, am I thinking subjectively? And if so, how can I think more objectively? I've found it's just so insanely impactful. So back to your question of emerging leader being brought down by anxiety or things like that. You need reps. You need reps in realizing that it's not going to kill you. It's not going to destroy you. It's not going to destroy the life you've built thus far, and it's not going to stop you from building the life you want to build moving forward. So you need reps. You need repetition. You need familiarity with it. You need empathy with whatever's happening. Number two is again your expectations. If you expect it not to happen, or if you ask for it not to happen when you can't actually in reality control it, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're focusing on something that you have no power, no influence, no control over, and that is, I mean, if you want to get really to brass tacks in business, that is wasted dollars, that is wasted time, that is wasted effort that you will never get back. And I can say with certainty myself, I wasted more time than I even care to remember trying to control things that I can't control. And probably in some ways will still continue to do that, even though I'm aware of it now. And so it's something we all struggle with. Number three is, and again, I take this from Leila Harmozy, number three is the skill of returning to baseline. So this is a newer one for me that I'm still sussing out for myself, but I've seen really, really, really great quick returns on this concept where instead of focusing on not feeling the feeling or not having the reaction, the gut reaction, or not feeling the anxiety about something that's happening, have it. But then each time you do, focus on returning to baseline just a little bit quicker. Because our ability to react to something, that's going to take, unfortunately, just based on nurture and nature and how we were brought up and everything inside of us, some of us, I'll totally raise my hand here, I react very strongly when things happen. Whether that's because of how I was brought up or my, proclivity for anxiety or whatever it is, I react very strongly to things. I am a partner will call me, I'm a very dramatic person. I will totally own that. And so my usual response to something personal, professional, anything in between is usually very intense. So what I've started to focus on, and it's again shown really, really great results just initially, is I'm letting the intense feeling be there. I'm working on the skill of not letting it impact my actions so much, but I'm letting the intense feeling be there. It can go as high on the I'm thinking of like a bar chart, right? It can go as high on the graph as it wants. But I am working on what I can impact is once it peaks, I am working on returning to my baseline as soon as humanly possible. Every single time. And every time I notice that I get faster and faster and faster at it. And so again, it's controlling the things that you can't control. Serenity prayer situation, controlling the things you can control and then knowing the difference. And so I realized that while it is a skill that I do hope to develop over time to be able to control my initial gut reaction, I realize and I recognize myself and I accept within myself that even though I don't have the full skill to be able to do that and I'm still developing that skill, it is within my power currently to control how quickly I return to my baseline, I return to, practicality.
Yeah, we have power.
Yep.
And we have power. And I'm so, so grateful for that. Bradley, we could really talk probably for another full hour. We could, but I do want to ask you to leave our listeners with like something that they can do like today, like a powerful shift, something that they're hearing this, they're watching it and they're saying, you know what, I hear that, I've tried this, I've got discouraged, I got some hope now, I'm hearing these strategies, I'm hearing these books, but some of that might feel a little overwhelming because depending on where they are, and we don't want to judge any of that, but what is something that somebody can take today that can be a powerful shift that they can start making change in their relationship with anxiety that even can lead to the area of money? Because we even do a whole lot about the area of money, but let's just be real, a lot of stress is coming from that as well. And so what could something that we can take away that we can do today?
Get rid of punishment. Just throw it out the window.
Woo!
We have this proclivity for punishing ourselves. I used to be a personal trainer, so I use a lot of personal, fitness examples and stuff. if we don't go to the gym one day when we promised ourselves that we would, or we thought we would, or we thought we should, what 99% of us, what do we do the next day? We say, oh, I need to go twice today because I missed yesterday. Or, I don't know if you count calories. I do not advocate for counting calories. Long story short, I think that's the most toxic thing ever, but we can talk about that later. You count calories, and you're just only supposed to do 2,000 today, and you did 3,000 by mistake because whatever. What do most people do tomorrow? They say, oh, I'm only going to have 1,000 tomorrow to make up for my 3,000 I had yesterday. Throw that out the window. Get rid of that. The punishment that we inflict upon ourselves is, for most of us, the reason why it makes it so much harder to get to where we want to go. Because, again, the person who can act in all situations, the person who can act, if you have days that range from 1 to 100, the person who can act in all 100 of those situations versus the person who only acts when it's 100, or let's say in the top 20%, so between 80 to 100. I bet on that. I bet on the person who can act in all situations any day, because the person who can act in all situations realizes that there is only so much they can do in that day. They accept that. They are proud of themselves for that, and they don't let that impact how they approach every moment, how they approach the moments moving forward. Because if you are constantly going back and trying to get over, trying to make up for quote unquote mistakes that you think you made in the past, you will not pull your head out of your ass long enough to see the amazing stuff that's happening in your future. So I think the sooner you can completely leave punishment off of the table and just simply say, today wasn't ideal. Today wasn't what I want. Isn't that punishment enough? Isn't that realization enough? Because I believe that if you trust yourself, and if you love yourself, and if you respect yourself enough to a level to act on, we'll say, the realization that this moment was not as optimal as you would have liked it to have been, as beneficial as you would like it to have been, that's all you need. And you can go forward in the new moment doing exactly what you set out to do, and then build progress off of that, build momentum off of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Stop punishing ourselves. Matter of fact, in the comment section, if you're on YouTube, I'm going to encourage you just to put that in the comment section. Like, stop punishing yourself, or just make it personal. Say, I will no longer punish myself. Right. So I received that. I'm grateful for that. I typically ask the guests to leave us with a word of empowerment, but I think you just did that. And so with that being said, this has been an amazing episode. Elevation Nation, please go back, not only listen to it again, but please pause, take notes, share it with somebody, because this is real deal things. This is something that has been lived and experienced, and he has more than a t-shirt to prove of what it is that he's gone through. And so, Bradley, I have to know, where can we find you online, your podcast, website? We're on LinkedIn and on YouTube primarily through this episode, and then all listening platforms. But how can we follow you on social? And do you have anything else coming up that we need to be involved in? Let me know.
Well, I sincerely appreciate you having me on, man. I'm really honored. I run my podcast. Again, it's called Redefining Growth. It's on Spotify, Apple, all the places. We're about 34, 35, I think, episodes in now. Post once a week on Wednesdays. I also post on Instagram. I've got about 25,000 followers there. Just my name, Bradley Rausch. My spelling was taken, so put an extra Y at the end of Bradley. And then on LinkedIn, I will post a lot of crossover content between business, entrepreneurship, and also a lot of the personal stuff as well. So those are my two kind of main platforms for content. And as far as things coming up, I tell you what, man, I am so focused right now in this season on figuring out how to best over deliver for the people that I'm honored to connect with, and then we figure out what happens from there. But I'm in a season of really making sure that I show up as my best self, so I can impact as many people as I can, and we figure out what happens from there. So
Well, you've done an amazing job impacting Elevation Nation. And so, Bradley, we thank you for sharing your gift, your wisdom, your journey, your transformational work from the inside out for us in the community. Elevation Nation, as always, you are amazing for showing up. Continue to follow, to like whatever Bradley is putting out. You have my word on it at this point in place. I'm telling you guys, identify with it, resonate with it, and just continue to just not track the following, not track his unfolding, but I'm encouraging you to look at yourself, look at what he's putting out there, look at his heart posture. He's listening to what the man just said. He said, look, I'm not even concerned about putting out things right now. I'm concerned about giving value. So why wouldn't you want to follow, like, subscribe, and be in a position to realize that heart posture? So again, I'm grateful for your character. I'm grateful for who you are. Guys, look, if you haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe here, but more importantly, go find out where Bradley is and go ahead and follow him as well. All right. So guys, if you heard about the book, we're going to be putting that out here on Thursday. Make sure you're on our email list. I am christianfjohnson.com. That's on there as well. You can find us on social. We appreciate you. Bradley, you're amazing. You're awesome. And Elevation Nation, may good, great, and awesomeness continue to flow to you and through you all week long. Blessings, and we'll see you next week.